The superheroes of DC Comics have many different abilities, all of which are used to tell fantastic stories that we all love, but it doesn't mean they always make sense. For example, Alan Scott. Alan Scott is the original Green Lantern, the original powerhouse of the Justice Society, and he is the most unique of the human heroes to gain the Green Lantern title, in my opinion. Alan's ring is unique as it is powered by the Star Heart, a repository of magical energy made by the Guardians of the Universe. This allows him to do things like releasing eldritch blasts. His ring also has an inexplicable vulnerability to wood, but for me, what makes Alan Scott a little extra weird is that his ring transformed him into an energy being. Alan Scott absorbed the Star Heart into himself after years of using it, basically becoming it himself. Unfortunately, this raises a lot of questions. How did it turn him into energy? He internalized the power source, but that shouldn't have made him energy. How does he get hurt when his corporeal form is now just his own concept of who he is? He should just now be completely invincible, but that doesn't seem to be the case. As a being of energy, he can kind of just make the rules whatever he wants them to be, and I guess the rules are that he can get hurt. Now, despite his incredibly confusing continuity, Hawkman and Hawkgirl are both characters I have always thought were just kinda super cool. I mean, look at them and those giant wings. It's awesome, but it's actually not the wings that allows them to fly. Hawkman actually achieves lift and actually most of his powers thanks to his nth metal belt and boots. Nth metal has psychoreactive electromagnetic and gravitational properties, so when he wills it, the nth metal will use anti-gravity to grant him lift. The wings then provide the thrust and the maneuverability. Where it gets weird is how the nth metal provides his other powers, notably super strength, super durability, super vision, and a healing factor. Gravitational properties could totally help him with the super strength, allowing him to probably negate an object's mass. Sure, but I can't really think of any way to explain the durability, which usually accompanies strength, the super vision, and most of all, the healing factor. All of those abilities are gained from his nth metal, but it makes no sense. Now, many a time have I spoken about Elongated Man, who somehow managed to gain his abilities by consuming a certain fruit. His origin is pretty ridiculous, but when it comes to stretching heroes, only one has really gone to the point of making absolutely no sense, and his name is Plastic Man. Plastic Man is known to the nerdy community for being one of the most surprisingly powerful superheroes DC Comics has. After being exposed to unknown chemicals, Plastic Man gained the ability to manipulate his own body on a molecular level, meaning he has complete control over its shape, size, and density. He's able to alter his size, which I'm not even going to go into that, but he's also been able to stretch his limbs, transform into other people or objects, allowing him to do things like fly and increase his strength. He's practically invulnerable and immortal and can regenerate if he does get hurt. That is all fine. Where it goes completely off the rails is when this guy turns himself into things like a working aeroplane and a space rocket. So now he can just change the actual chemical makeup of his body, produce fuel, and create combustion? Nah. Next up, Martian Manhunter is one of my actual favorite superheroes. He's super cool. He's so, how you say, mysterious. Just like some of his powers. Martian Manhunter is like a Swiss army knife. He's super strong and durable on the level of Superman. He can fly, he has shape-shifting powers, which also somehow allows him to increase or decrease his size, which irks me to no degree. He has some of the strongest telepathy on the entire planet, and while still being super durable and strong, he can also be completely intangible. He can fire extremely powerful beams of mysterious energy out of his eyes that are pretty much the same as Superman's, except not powered by the sun, and we have no idea where that amount of energy is actually coming from. And while also having all those other abilities, he can also go completely invisible. Not just blending into the background, but legit invisible. I love him because of how powerful he is while also having his personality, but sometimes it feels like he was just given powers to make him a backup Superman. So as most fans of DC Comics know, Kryptonians are wildly powerful. Superman and his entire race are godlike aliens who have a very limited number of weaknesses. Most Kryptonians are similar in other universes as well. Superman's cousin Supergirl is entirely the same when it comes to her powers and weaknesses, if not not on different levels based on experience and all that jazz. But Supergirl has a multiversal counterpart in the form of Power Girl, who is basically the exact same person but from Earth 2. But for some reason, this Kryptonian from Earth 2 has all her invulnerabilities reduced to nothing in the face of a pointy enough twig. It was revealed that Power Girl is vulnerable to raw, unprocessed materials, meaning she is vulnerable to both wood and rocks. Do you hear how ridiculous that is? Raw, unprocessed materials make up almost the entire natural world. The weirdest thing about this is that no other Kryptonians from Earth 2 share this weakness. It's just Power Girl, and it didn't even last forever. Next up is Metamorpho. Metamorpho is an elemental superhero with the power to transmute his body into various forms using different periodic elements that were found in the human body. Now, originally known as the archaeologist Rex Mason, he was exposed to the Orb of Ra in Egypt, and it changed him into one of the mythical Metamorphi. That, or he was exposed to the energy of an ancient meteorite. Either one. So yeah, his powers are mostly mythical and somewhat magical, which makes arguing with them in any way kind of pointless, but that's never stopped me before. Now, when he first appeared, Metamorpho was only able to change his body into and use elements that were already found within the human body. And if anything is going to make sense, then that is probably the thing that does make sense. But what's weird is that a part of Metamorpho's body managed to separate and form a duplicate of Metamorpho, and it started calling itself Rufus, aka Shift. For some reason, Shift could manipulate all elements, not just the ones inside the human body, and eventually, when Metamorpho reabsorbed Shift into himself, he also gained that power boost. That is the problem I have with Metamorpho, not the endless list of other things that he can do. Next up, the Red Bee isn't particularly outstanding. Rick Raleigh is just a guy in a suit who fights crime, usually with a stinger ray which he can effectively use against enemies. That is what it is. Can't argue with it. A dude in a suit with a taser. Cool. What is outstanding to the point of being almost completely unbelievable is that Red Bee has figured out how to train bees. Red Bee can use his favorite bee, who is named Michael, for spying and infiltration, but he was also said to have trained many other bees other than Michael. It's just that Michael is the only truly talented of his bees who has also learned or developed the ability to use his stinger multiple times without tearing his own body apart and going to bee heaven. Rick can find another genius bee to replace Michael if Michael expires. There is no further explanation, and I personally don't need one. Sounds pretty self-explanatory to me. Training bees. Now, Friendly Fire is a member of the superhero group called the All-Star Section 8. He has the power to project energy blasts from his fists. That's cool. At least maybe it would be if he was anyone else, but he is Friendly Fire, and Friendly Fire is a special case. It may be kind of redundant to say that his ability makes no sense because, yeah, he is kind of a joke character, but Friendly Fire never hits his intended target with any of his attacks, and what's worse is that no matter how hard he tries, he always accidentally hits innocent people, and more often than not, specifically his friends and allies. What's crazy is that even when he really tried, he still managed to not only blow off his own head, like straight up, but he even managed to still hit his own ally, Defenestrator. The question I like to ask myself is if this is actually an accident. Is this just gross negligence? Is he really just that bad at aiming, or is this an actual legit byproduct of his power? Does his power actually force him to never hit his target? Am I asking a pointless question? Yes, but you asked for this. Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. If you want to talk about heroes that are just completely wacky and nonsensical, we don't need to look any further than the Doom Patrol. And for our runner-up spot, we're looking at Danny the Street, a living sentient street who can teleport to any city in the world. He was first introduced in Doom Patrol Volume 2 number 35 in 1990, and his main purpose and drive in this world is to bring happiness to those who inhabit whatever city he is currently set up in, giving those who have nowhere to go a place to rest their heads. Now, I want it to be known that I love Danny. He is incredibly wholesome. He likes to cross-dress and dress himself in a nice pink frilly decorations on some of his buildings. He can communicate through signs and billboards, but he cannot actually speak himself. He eventually became the headquarters of Doom Patrol, and at one point he grew to be Danny the World, which was an entire planet, yes, and then at another point he was deconstructed down to Danny the Brick. And one time he was even just the humble Danny the Alley. Do I even need to say why this makes no sense? I don't think I do. And finally, are your superpowers not making any sense? Well, I have an easy fix for you. Just tag on the word mystery and that should solve your problems. I'm assuming that's what Flex Mentallo did when he described his superpower of muscle mystery. Flex here has the absolutely insane ability to manipulate reality in a whole handful of ways simply by flexing different muscles. Now, I'm not going to argue with this much. For starters, Flex was created from a drawing. That's how he came into reality, so there is really no basis for me to even start to justify anything about him and his abilities. By flexing different muscles, Flex can do some relatively normal superhero things like gaining super strength, durability, and all that jazz, but he can also flex muscles in order to, I don't know, survive and travel in the vacuum of space, or fly, or travel dimensions, or create energy constructs, or control his own pheromones, or control people's minds, or see the future, or even use telepathy and telekinesis, and you just kinda have to accept it, because that's the way it is. But that, nerds, is the list. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews. I will catch you all in the flippity flop, but until then, stay safe, and peace out, nerds!